It's time for the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. What an interesting day I had. It's one of these moments where you get a bit of conversation with somebody that just kind of makes you think, where have you been? What hole has your head been? Where are your political leanings? How did you get here? What brought us to this place? And I think about this as a country. I mean, you know, when I grew up, you know, the right and the left, they had their viewpoints. Liberals and conservatives and Democrats and Republicans actually had, I don't know, morals and values and beliefs, had an agenda. Oh, how that's changed. And it started with an email. And I got an email from someone who didn't identify himself. One of those kind of emails with a bunch of letters and a whole bunch of numbers. Not sure how it was generated, but not something someone wanted me to be able to recognize. Threw out just a 2-line email, said, "I heard your show last night with the beer guy." He was talking about Fred Willman from the Beer Project. "I don't get why you libs care about the transgender freaks." He said something about Dems putting up some fight of over 4 people in the entire state of Missouri. And I sat and I thought about this. And I've been thinking about it all day long. There used to be a moment, and this is one of those struggles I have where our politics have taken us. Because understand, what we've seen the conservative movement morph into is really a hate party. What we've seen the right turn into is really a bunch of extremists, fascists. The new right, not the Q kooks, not the hate mongers that currently reside as the GOP, but the new right of the political spectrum, the fascists. Not your grandfather's right wing. Well, actually, your great-grandfather's right wing. These are the folks who are economically populist, culturally ultra-conservative, and hyper nationalistic. These are your tan pant wearing, tiki torch, flame carrying, your new kind of Nazi. There are those, and then there are the crazy, everyone's a pedophile and everyone's a groomer, and you've got this division, and it's all about grievance, it's all about anger, it's all about division, it's all about hatred, it's all about destruction. And it's all funded from the very wealthy, because again, they don't want working people to come together and think forward. So as I'm looking at this 2-line email, and maybe it's just I spend too much time dissecting this person's thoughts, because I responded and I didn't get a response back. The first part, why do you libs care? And part of it is, I consider myself a liberal, but in the Kennedy sense of what a liberal is. And if you remember the John Kennedy, idea, if you mean a liberal as someone who looks ahead and not behind, someone who welcomes new ideas without rigid reaction, someone who cares about the welfare of others, someone who cares about their health, their housing, their schools, their jobs, their civil rights, their civil liberties, someone who believes we can break through the stalemates and the suspicions that grip us. If that's what you mean by liberal, then yeah, I am that. And I proudly take on the lib title. Call me the libtard. And I'll wear it because I believe we can move forward. We can make lives better. And you know what? Even if it is 4 people in a state, we used to believe that everyone mattered. Life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. And I believe this. Now look, I've said this before a bunch of times. I don't understand the transgender stuff. I don't. And I have friends who have gone through it. Don't understand it. And as I've told them, I don't, and I'm grateful I don't understand it. I don't know what it's like to wake up every day for years, for decades, going, I believe I should be somebody else. I have no idea how torturous that would be. But you know whose decision it is to do anything about that? Not mine. And certainly not this guy's. So why do I care? Well, I care because that could be me. That could be anyone. Because I believe in life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. And I started thinking about the jingoism. Again, the hyper-nationalism. My conservative friends who love to tell me that we need to say the Pledge of the Allegiance every day. It's the same people, by the way, who were telling me during the 10s how we needed to carry our constitutions with us everywhere we went. In fact, had beautiful ones in their pockets. Beautiful unopened constitutions that they never bothered to read, but was always right there by their heart because they were so pleased with them. And it's the same thing with the Pledge of Allegiance. They're happy. They got the first part, Pledge Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. And then they forgot about the republic for which it stands. And the liberty and justice for all. They remember the God part. Oh, one nation under my God. Never mind anyone else's. Never mind. But it's that with liberty and justice for all part that, again, I learned as a child that was so important. Life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, liberty and justice for all. Words that used to have meaning, now we use as platitudes. Now we use as attack lines. Now we get some half-wit going, you libs care about these freaks. And look, as I said, I don't understand it. And I'm grateful I don't understand it. Because I don't know how torturous it is. And as a friend who I've known for, I guess, 17 years now, came to me a year ago and, we had a conversation, was transitioning. I said, I don't get it, never going to get it. I wish you the best. I hope this is the happiness that you need. I hope this is what you're looking for. Do I understand everything about it? Do I get it? No. Are there going to be bumps along the way? Absolutely. Do I agree with absolutely every part of every bit that's going on? No. But we're never supposed to, and we're never going to. But to attack people who are seeking their happiness, who are pursuing that happiness, that life, liberty, I'm struggling with this. And then they're freaks. Well, you know what? I think a lot of those people who show up to Trump rallies are freaks. Should we be condemning them? I think someone who would send me an email with this many misspelled words is a freak. Should we be coming after you? Should we be passing legislation to call you out? And when you have the power of the government, and this is what conservatives, and I'm reaching out to my conservative friends because my liberal friends understand this. My progressive friends know this. Government is not the place where you do these kind of things. Government is not the place to hash out these kind of personal decisions. Conservatives used to understand that. Conservatives used to understand that you don't use the power of the state to come down on those 4 people. You don't use the power of the state against the individual. They used to believe it, man. But now they see the power. The fascists have convinced them, they have, that we can make them think the way we do. That we're going to get the children to think the way we do. We're going to hijack education. Because there's that theory about race that's critical that none of them can articulate or understand, but they're being force-fed the outrage candy by the chaos merchants who keep ramming it down their throat, and they keep buying it. This is the frustrating part that I have in this, because I get this kind of email often. Why do you stand up for them? You're not one of them. No, I'm not. But I empathize. I want them to be happy. I want them to lead their best life. And I don't think that's too much to ask in the greatest country in the world, or so we're told. If we can't be gracious enough, if we can't be warm enough and decent enough, what are we? I keep being told we're a Christian nation. What's that thing that they throw out all the time, the misquote of Gandhi? They attribute it to Gandhi. I like your Christians. I like your Christ, just not your Christians. If he said it, I agree with it. Because look at how angry and mean and spiteful and hateful these folks are. All because they don't agree. All because they don't understand. And all because they're fortunate that maybe they've got it all together. Maybe they're special. But for those folks who don't, and the folks I don't understand, I'm a little more forgiving. Maybe a little more tolerant. Maybe we could all be, just a little bit. Love to hear your thoughts. Give us a call, 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. If you want to weigh in, I'd love to hear it. You can also email me like my email friend who called me a lib. And do you take that as an insult? 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Also, remember, grab the podcast. Go to the website and grab that, or wherever you get your podcasts. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show for working people. Come to talk.
From the steel mills of Pennsylvania to the auto factories of Michigan to the modern makers movement, manufacturing makes our nation great. I'm Scott Paul, president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing. We bring business and labor together to advocate for policies that everyone can agree on. Together, we can strengthen manufacturing and create good-paying American jobs. Help us keep it made in America.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. Let's go to the phone lines. Got Alice on line 1. Alice, how are we doing today?
I'm doing okay.
What's on your mind?
Oh, a couple of things. First of all, I don't take it as an insult when someone calls me a lib. I have been known to throw a Republican politician off of my property when they called me a Republican. That's a true story. Second of all, the right-wing evangelicals, the extreme Puritan bunch, historically, and I'm talking going back to the first century of Christianity, if one is a student of history, this is going back to the roots. the very first century, after Paul, Saul, whatever you want to call him, created Christianity, the rabble rousers went around and they were doing this. I mean, they were encouraged to literally, they went into people's houses and they destroyed pagan materials. They destroyed the library at Alexander. They literally stoned to death Greek philosophers. So, I mean, it's not something that they haven't done in the past. That they've done it before. And the last thing I wanted to say is I don't bend the knee to anybody. One of my ancestors said during the Revolutionary War, when his brother warned him not to sign the Declaration of Independence, he said, "Damn the consequences and give me the pen." So, you know, the right wings they're out of hand, and somebody better do something pretty quick because I think people are really getting tired of it. But you have a good evening.
Thanks, Alice. Appreciate it. Good stuff. I'm right there with you. Thanks. Let's go to line 3. Got Christian on line 3. Christian, what's on your mind?
Hey, Rick. Well, what's on my mind is, would consider myself, if I had to label myself, I'd say I'm a leftist. But I'm starting to wonder whether or not I'm a leftist or I just have compassion and empathy for marginalized groups of people and the working class people of this country. There's so much that's going on right now with Elon Musk buying Twitter for billions and billions of dollars, but where's the World Hunger Plan or all these issues we could solve with that money instead of just ego pumping, money exchanging hands, all these business deals. I feel like there's a lot more that should be done, but we're stuck here arguing against billionaires buying newspapers and all this type of stuff. It just seems like, for the working people of this country and the empathetic liberals, I guess you could say, it's kind of, it brings you down a little bit, seeing what's going on around the country.
Yeah, I'm with you, but this is where I keep coming back to what my friend Morris Pearl says over at the Patriotic Millionaires. It is time to tax the rich. It's time to tax them heavily. It's time to go back to the good socialist President Dwight David Eisenhower's tax code and start taxing them mightily and use that money to do exactly what you said. Start feeding the hungry, finding shelter for the homeless, and taking care of the sick and infirmed, and start doing, if we're going to be the Christian nation they keep telling us that we are, how about doing some of those things that we were told to do?
Hallelujah and amen to that. And Dwight D. Eisenhower, last best Republican president that this country's ever had. Farewell address, he said it the best. Every warship launched, every gun made is a theft from those who are hungry, those who are cold, those who aren't housed. 100% agree with you, Rick, and I really appreciate what you're doing.
Thanks so much, Christian. Good stuff. Thanks so much. Let's go on to, let's see who we got here. We got Jim in Chicago on line 2. Jim, how are we doing today?
Good, Rick. How about yourself?
I'm great. What's on your mind, brother?
Couple of quick comments about what you touched on about the religion and the flag and tolerance. I kind of found through the years in my experience that people that wrap themselves around a flag are generally, in the most sense, the least patriotic people, and use that flag to cover whatever their nefarious activities might be. And I also find that those that wrap themselves in religion seem to be the most kinkiest, freakiest people around, and they use their religion as a cover. And just to end on a lighter note about tolerance, tolerance is a good thing, and what could really help with tolerance is to find the right combination of drugs and or alcohol. Thank you.
Good stuff, Jim. Thanks so much, brother. That's great. No, I mean, to Jim's point, honestly, and I've said this before a bunch of times, the only times I've ever been ripped off are by people who've told me how religious they are. In any business dealings I've gotten, it's always been the hyper religious and we're so pious. Those are the people who cheat you, that have always cheated me. My personal experience, that's what I'm sharing, not broad blanket for anyone else, and I'm sure someone else will probably agree with me. And you can do that by emailing me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. But here's the thing, and I go back to what Christian said. The reality is we have allowed over the last 40, 50 years our tax code to go to people like Musk and creating this billionaire boys club. And it's mostly boys. There's just some women, the Waltons, there's a couple. But really it's the billionaire boys club. And we've through our sacrifice, we've tightened our belt. We've created the largest billionaire class in the history of civilization. And they've done really nothing legacy-wise with it. You go, they've built great corporations. They've done it. No, have they really helped humanity? And this is where I go back to Bernie Sanders' piece late last week, that I talked about. Whoever figures out how to get into space, because Musk and Bezos, there's other reasons they're going to space other than we're just going to play with our phallic rockets in front of everybody. They can play with phallic things all they want behind closed doors. Going up into space is a whole different reason. They want to figure out how to extract things off those asteroids and in outer space and get it back here. They don't want to go live their life in outer space. Way too difficult, not the plan. They want to be the first trillionaire. This is about ego. This is about them. It's not about us. And this is why I'm a believer in government. A government of, for, and by we the people. We haven't had that in a very long time. I'm not naive enough to believe that in my lifetime that's happened. I strive for it. I want that. I believe that we can do this. I believe that an educated, active, engaged working class, folks like you and me coming together and saying we demand better, can accomplish this once we start recognizing when they're feeding us the outrage candy and once we start spitting it out in their face, saying no more. We're not going to let this kind of stuff that you throw out in front of us to divide us keep us pitted against one another. Because what this is meant to do is continue to rob us blind. And this is the weird part. I look at the guy who sent me this email, didn't put his name on it because he really ashamed. And if you're listening, please call us. I want to know why you sent this without a name. Other than just to enrage. Other than just to keep others as miserable as you must be. Because we have to stop this. The only way we have a chance is if we come together. Because look, they've got all the money. They control the media. They control, virtually all of the arms of communications. Musk just bought Twitter out of lark. Hey, I'm going to open it up. But we've done one thing that they can't do. You ready for it? We've outprocreated them. There are more of us. And while we still can, we can vote. And if we vote in the right direction, we still have a system right now where we can get people like us into the halls of power to make people like them pay their fair share in taxes. And we can use that money for healthcare, for education, for infrastructure, for, taking care of the hungry, the poor, the sick, whatever we need to do. That's the America I want to live in. Quick break, right back. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1944. That was the day the Army National Guard seized the Chicago property of Montgomery Ward and removed its chairman, Sewell Avery. The Chicago-based company repeatedly refused to accept a National War Labor Board order to recognize the workers' union and abide by the board-negotiated collective bargaining agreements. After refusing the second board order, President Franklin Roosevelt ordered the Army National Guard to seize the company's central mail order house, retail store, and other related properties in the city. Avery was physically carried out of his office. Wartime no-strike pledges were in effect to avoid strikes or any disruption in war production. From a distance, it looked as if the president had triumphed the cause of labor in forcefully implementing the Wagner Act. Workers of the CIO United Mail Order Warehouse and Retail Employees Union had walked off the job over recognition issues on April 12th. Montgomery Ward officials argued again, as they had 2 years earlier, that they were not engaged in war production, held no government contracts, and that the dispute is not one which might impede the prosecution of the war by the board's own terms. But the government feared strike activity would only spread to other industries in Chicago and elsewhere. Local Teamsters and railway brotherhoods all supported the strike and refused to handle shipments to and from Ward facilities. The CIO union agreed to end the strike on the eve of the seizure. Others in the labor movement called FDR's move a hoax and a device to break strikes and get workers back on the job without any gains. Roosevelt issued a third seizure of Ward's facilities nationwide by the end of the year. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So since the Twitter was brought up in the last segment, kind of got to wonder, and this, even Bezos brought this up, the possibility, maybe, don't know, what's going to happen with China? Musk, has got a lot of ties with Tesla in China and the batteries and all this stuff. A lot of questions there, but now Twitter, is this possibly, I'm just kind of throwing this out here. It's all about free speech, we're told, right? If we're led to believe what Musk is saying, it's about the public square, it's about opening it up to free speech, yet lots of ties with the Communist Chinese Party, not such big fans of free speech. And it's a question I've got to ask my expert, which is why I've asked my good friend Scott Paul to come share some thoughts with us. Scott is the president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing. Their website, americanmanufacturing.org. He is my go-to guy on everything China. So, Scott, thanks for taking some time for us.
Hey, Rick, it is great to be with you tonight, as always.
So let me ask you, is it too much to ask the question of, is it out of bounds to wonder if, maybe there's something possibly that, I don't know, Musk, China, Tesla, anything?
Yeah, I think it's this very, very serious concern, his business dealings in China. And here's why. You just said that, an autocrat's kind of worst enemy is free speech. It's not permitted in China insofar as dissent against a government position or individual. Okay. And so the problem is this, that, Elon Musk's one of his major companies is Tesla. Tesla's second biggest market in the world is China. They've sold something like 300,000 or more vehicles there. They have a factory in Shanghai. They have showrooms all over the country. And he's already had interactions with the Chinese government where, they've had to be very careful about the way in which they operate there once they get concerns about if the Chinese Communist Party has a concern about the way that Tesla's operating. So there's already evidence that he's had to consider that. So what if what if Beijing gets upset because there's too much Hong Kong speech on Twitter, or there's too much Uyghur genocide speech on Twitter, or even there's too much criticism that the Chinese government has not broken with Russia over the invasion of Ukraine, or anything else like that. And so I do think that he needs to very clearly state kind of what the separation of the businesses is going to be, what the policy is going to be, because I think that it is there's a lot of conflicts that are both potential and actual conflicts taking place right now that could undermine either the legitimacy of Twitter or the way in which I think we're all used to seeing it operating, which is imperfect, of course, but is not, is not, tries to work past the censorship and has a robust conversation about what's happening in China on there right now.
It's just one of those things where my first reaction was, no one person should be able to own that. And this, for me, there's a whole bunch of this. The China part didn't come until I saw the Bezos question, till Jeff Bezos brought it up, and he was retweeting somebody else and all of that. For me, the fact that one person can muster up this kind of wealth to buy this and have control of something this powerful, for me, is just, this should be that moment as a country where we go, this has gotten out of hand. We now need to rein some of this extraordinary wealth in, because the inequality now has just gotten way out of hand. It's time.
Yeah.
It's time to start reining this in, because this isn't healthy for democracy.
Yeah, he's controlling one of the main corners of the public square, and he obviously has very very forceful views on a lot of issues that, again, are not aligned with, I guess, liberal small L thinking. Like a tolerance for the right to organize, for instance, or criticism of his own business dealings, and again, this conflict with China, and we could go on and on and on, but it is it's troubling on a bunch of different levels. And what I don't know what Twitter's going to become, but and what he's going to do with it, because but it's clear that he wants some sort of control, because
Right.
he's not going to. I mean, he turns more profits at these other places than he ever will at Twitter. I think Twitter has the revenues of like Olive Garden. So, he's bought the Olive Garden of social media, I guess. No disrespect meant to Olive Garden, but it just doesn't. It's not busting the seams with revenue.
Gotcha. That's brilliant. But but I look at this, and you hit something there that caught my ear. What about labor organizing? What about labor messaging? Because look, you could argue, and he has, that it's the public square. I don't necessarily agree that it's public square. Public square is public square. I prefer to go that's public square. This is still a privately owned entity that's still going to have terms of service, even if Elon Musk owns it. So it's still going to be a private entity with this stuff going on. It's just going to have someone else changing the rules. That whole First Amendment still doesn't apply. At least I don't believe it does. But the labor organizing part is an interesting thing for me that you brought up, because now you've got this this extraordinarily wealthy guy who can crush labor speech or create algorithms that will ensure that nobody sees labor speech.
Absolutely. Right. Yeah, I think that's right. That's a real danger. And so I think he needs to speak to that, and about the types of controls and limitations and approach they're gonna take with that, as well as just misinformation. Because I think Twitter, obviously, nothing's going to be a perfect product in this regard, but at least when there's crazy stuff out there that is clearly built on misinformation, or designed to misinform, or designed to create that kind of chaos, then I think at least currently Twitter feels like there's at least some disclosure obligation that they have, and in extreme cases to ban that, and to sideline it, right? And so he casts himself as this libertarian kind of free speech zealot, and so we shall see what his limits are, because there's certainly a dangerous to there's obviously, we all know this, there's incredible dangers to health, to safety, to all sorts of things of amplifying misinformation that's designed to sow the seeds of chaos.
Well, we know free speech, you don't have absolute free speech in the public square. So why would you think you're going to have it on Twitter? And I've had people, oh, my free speech is restored. Oh, silly person.
Not so much. You know, according to the gospel of Elon Musk,
There you
right?
go.
So that's kind of what we're talking about here. Yeah.
Well, the funny thing is Donald Trump ain't going back, so that's funny to me. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show here with Scott Paul. Scott is the president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing. AmericanManufacturing.org is their website. You can check out the incredible work that they do. Let's get into some of the meat and potatoes. The Musk stuff aside, as important as that is, there's some rumblings about. Hey, we gotta start, rolling in the cheap imports. Got to do something to cut inflation because look, I believe corporate America's gouging our eyes out. I believe they're raising prices because they can. There's talk of lowering the tariffs again because hey, we need to jack up those trade deficits even worse. Will that help the inflation? Will it stop corporate CEOs from jacking up prices and gouging us even more? I'm curious your thoughts.
No. In a word, no. I think that cutting the tariffs that are in place on Chinese products right now, and keep in mind it's not on all Chinese products, it's on targeted Chinese products, would have no either anti-inflationary impact or get products to us any more quickly, right? And I think those are two things that some people are concerned about right now, and in many cases rightly so. But the answer is not to take these tariffs off. And there's a couple of good reasons for that. Number one is that these goods that we're talking about from China are mostly intermediate goods. That's not something consumers don't buy directly, but it ends up in a part of something that consumers or businesses may purchase. And in any event, that total volume of products amounts to a tiny percentage, maybe like 1%, maybe a little more of the basket of consumer goods that we consider. So that's not going to, if you're adjusting tariffs a little bit on a little bit of stuff, that's not going to move things in the way that oil supply and demand or energy supply and demand or food or other things are going to, right? And so I think that's an important consideration. But what it would do, Rick, and I think this is the thing that really concerns me, is that we don't have a lot of leverage points with the Chinese government. We just don't. We gave a lot of those up. Those tariffs are one of the few kind of like, solid pieces of leverage that we have to either push back against unfair trade practices in Beijing or to try to get them to change their behavior. Now, I'm not optimistic that we can get the Chinese Communist Party to change its behavior on trade policy. But we at least ought to have that leverage, and we at least ought to have that pushback on unfair trade. And so I think, the Biden administration so far, to its credit, has done a really good job resisting all the calls to get rid of tariffs. But now I think part of this effort, because everybody wants to do something about inflation, it's like, well, it's in our power to adjust these tariffs, but the practical implication is negligible. And the long-term implications, the strategic implications are bad. They're bad. And, any thought that companies had of reshoring, right, of bringing some work back to the United States, that'll disappear when these tariffs start to come off. Yeah. Because they'll be like, well, it's back to business as usual. This is great. I can keep sourcing from China and not have to worry about it.
And here's where my mind goes, and you can correct me if you think I'm wrong. They'll begin resourcing from China. They'll bring it back, and since we're already used to the higher prices, they're going to just keep charging us the higher prices and pocket the extra that they're saving. So it never trickles down. Never.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I'd be curious to know if any of your listeners think that the savings would actually accrue and you'd see a lower price for a consumer product as a result of this tariff cut. Because I am with you. I don't think that happens. I think that the margins get better for the companies that do it. I think their profits get better. I don't see consumers benefiting from a tariff cut like that. It's something that's not going to show up. They will certainly use it as an excuse to jack up prices, but yeah, they're going to keep them there. They're not going to bring them down, and they're going to pocket the savings, and then it has a whole bunch of other spillover effects that I mentioned, where you're not going to be able to reshore the way we want to reshore. We lose a leverage point. And with the dollar strengthening, currency policy is a bizarre thing, but a stronger dollar actually means that it's harder for our exports to get out of the country, and that it's easier for imports to come in. And so when you combine lower tariffs, a stronger dollar, that means we're going to have a surge of imports that would come into the country, and that would wipe out a lot of manufacturing demand, which would be a really, really bad thing to do. Have we learned nothing over the last 2 years plus? We got to make some stuff here in the United States of America.
You listen to the Rick Smith Show. We're here with Scott Paul, president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing. You got a thought, question, comment? Give us a call, 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. Do you really think that the prices would come down if we got the cheap plastic crap from China? If you thought they could dump again? I want to hear it. 1-866-416-RICK. But I go back to this, Scott, because we've been sold this line for so long that, they should be able to have we should have the choice, give the consumers a choice. But the sad reality is when I go to the store, I don't get a choice. I went looking for a cable today. There are no American-made cables on the shelves anymore. And this has happened in product after product after product, because they're just not there. These companies have made the choice. We're going to go make it in the cheapest country possible. We're going to bring it back here, and we're going to fatten our bottom lines, which is why we're seeing corporate profits at that haven't been this high since the 1950s. CEO pays through the roof. Shareholders are thrilled, but working people are getting screwed because inflation hurts, man.
Yeah, it sure does. It sure does. And I just want to give you a very tangible example of what you're talking about. And this goes back a way, but it still holds true today. And I'll never forget this. I was on a bus tour with some members of Congress in the aftermath of NAFTA, like 4 or 5 years after NAFTA passed, looking at the impacts. And we were in Georgia, and the late, amazing John Lewis was on the bus with us, which was just a spectacular thing to hear his stories. But he introduced us to some workers, some African-American women who had worked at a factory that made telephonic equipment for AT&T in Georgia, okay? After NAFTA passed, this factory closed down. It moved to Mexico, okay? And AT&T was like, well, you'll get better consumer prices. So one of these ladies worked at Walmart as a cashier. And one day, she said she saw the phone that she used to make come across, her register. Someone was buying it, and it was the same price. It was the same price as it had been when it was made in the United States of America. Who was better off? AT&T shareholders, AT&T itself. But who was not better off? Those workers who went from a union manufacturing job to working in Walmart. And the consumers are getting duped. Yep. So it is it's like a Ponzi scheme that these companies play. Tariffs are not the driver of inflation or unemployment or recession in the United States. We got to keep them on. We got to make China get some progress, but we should not be taking them off in this kind of idea that somehow inflation is going to come down and all of our consumers are going to benefit.
I'm right there with you. Scott, as always, I appreciate the time, the input, the expertise. Great stuff you guys do. Keep up the great work, my friend.
All right. Likewise, Rick. Thanks so much for having me on. Appreciate it.
Anytime. Our good friend Scott Paul, president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing. Make sure you check out the website, americanmanufacturing.org. Great stuff, good resources. Most certainly stuff you want to see. Going to take a quick break. Back with your thoughts. 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. This is The Rick Smith Show. If you're just joining us, make sure you grab the podcast. Never miss a second of the program. Take it wherever you go. Back after this.
Here we are again. An overseas conflict hikes up our gas prices, and oil CEOs rake in record profits. It will keep happening until we break free from oil. Right now, we need Congress to ramp up production of clean, renewable energy sources. Energy that doesn't run out, so it costs families less. Energy that's made here in America. Energy that can't be manipulated by erratic dictators across the globe. Because real energy independence is built on clean energy.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Check out our website, thericksmithshow.com. Questions, comments, something on your mind, email us, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Make sure you check out the podcast. Always there, always for your enjoyment. Melanie, listening on WQEE 99.1 in Atlanta, asked the question, what is the number one thing you think Joe Biden can do right now to help working people? Wow. I sat and I thought about that for a couple of minutes, and thank you, Melanie, for the question. I did see something I think he really can help with. And I think one of the things that I would like to see just broke today, the fact that he, in private meetings with House Democrats, talking about some student loan forgiveness. I just over the weekend had family dinner with a relative, a young relative who was telling me about her student loans, and this poor kid is going to be like $100,000 in debt. And I'm sitting here going, oh my God, I can't imagine being 23 years old and going to be $100,000 in debt and having a job that's probably going to pay somewhere in the mid $20 an hour range. Somewhere we can make somewhere in the mid 40s, which I don't know how you, $100,000, that's like a mortgage. How are you going to start a life being that far behind? There has to be something. So you're looking at some 45 million people who are saddled with this kind of debt, an entire generation with massive, massive debt. They're saying, I think on the federal level, like $1.6 trillion. This is federal. Now, the majority of this poor girl's loans were not federal. These were private loans because evidently they're giving them away like candy. And the interest rates are just outrageous. She was telling me 9, 10, 11% interest. I'm going, we haven't seen those kind of rates, since the 70s. How are they gouging a generation? Why are they gouging a generation? How did that happen? How did we allow that? And the truth of the matter is, this is what Education Incorporated has done to us. This is what the attack on public education has been about. It's been about cashing in. It's not about critical race theory. It's not about caring about, we care about the children. It's not about that. It's about the cash. All of these euphemistically named groups and all of these angry mom groups funded overwhelmingly by the people who just want to destroy public education so they can profit off of it. So that, the real dream, to get you to take out a loan so you can send your kid to kindergarten. That's the dream, because every parent wants their kid to have the best, going to have the best kindergarten experience possible. So we're going to take out that $20,000 loan. This kid's $100,000 in debt. And I ran it by her. I said, I got to tell you, I don't know how we deal with this situation. My idea has always been, you took out the loan. You did this. How do you think how do we deal with this? And I said, I think the federal government has to buy them all up, and you pay them back at 0.5% interest. And at a certain point, we cap the amount that it costs you, 10 or 15% of your income or whatever that number is for X amount of years. And we start looking at some debt forgiveness down the road, and we start trying to make it right. What we've done to a generation by creating Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and the billionaire class, by cutting taxes to the point to where, oh no, we're going to give the money to the smart people because they know what to do with it. Yeah, make themselves more money, while saddling a generation with unreturnable debt. There's no way that in the next 20 years she's going to pay that $100,000 off and not move out of her parents' house. I mean, it's crazy what we have done, all in the name of skin in the game. It's crazy. And, look, you're going to the same state school. We're not talking about a private school. This is the great part about it. Same school that a relative of hers went to years earlier, decades earlier, and paid a much, much lower rate. and wasn't saddled with a lifetime of debt. How'd that happen? We screwed this generation badly. We need to start looking at making it right. We'll take a quick break. Right back with Hour 2. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
The best way to strengthen America's economy? How about investing in America's fastest growing industry? Clean energy. It means millions of jobs that pay well and can't be outsourced. And lower utility costs for families. Congress, let's get it done.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Check out our website, thericksmithshow.com. Questions, comments, something on your mind, you can email me, Rick, at thericksmithshow.com. Want to grab a couple quick emails to finish up today's program. Gary, listening on AM 950 KTNF, the progressive voice of Minnesota. Rick, the GOP keeps talking about groomers and pedophiles, and yet there are the groomers like in Tennessee and the pedophiles like the guy in North Dakota. And yes, the pedophile in North Dakota. Evidently, he quit his gig as the longest serving state senator there in this state because some child porn possibilities going on there. He rose to be one of the state's most powerful lawmakers. 46 years this guy was there. And you got to wonder, 79 years old, you got to wonder how many people are going to start coming out of the woodworks. Kind of reminded me when I was in high school, we had an athletic director who had been molesting kids for decades. And when that first kid came out, that first person came out, floodgates opened, and there were literally hundreds. It's amazing how the righteous doth fall. Amy, listening on WAUK AM 540, FM 101.1, The Shaw in Waukesha, Wisconsin. Rick, have you seen the demands the Amazon workers in Staten Island are making? They want $30 an hour. How do they think they're going to get that? I believe in unions. What do you talk about? And what you talk about, but you have to agree that's extreme, right? No. Actually, no. I think back to when I first started working. One of my first real union job, 1988. I was making $8.19 an hour in a warehouse. It was a hardware store warehouse. In today's dollars, that would have been over $20 an hour. With healthcare that I didn't pay a dime for, and a defined benefit pension fund that I didn't pay a dime for. Huge number of holidays, vacation, all that stuff. The top rate at the time was like 10 and a quarter, which would have been over $25 an hour. So no, I don't think 25. I don't think 30 is too much in Staten Island, New York. That was in Cleveland where I was. And I talked the other day about a contract up in Massachusetts, where it was 1979, they were making 9 and a quarter an hour, which the BLS calculator put at $34.67 an hour. So warehouse work back in the old days was paid right about then. So I think they're taking us back to a time when work in this country mattered, when workers were rewarded commiserately. They made the company huge amounts of profit, like Amazon, because I think Amazon can afford it. I think they're making the right asks there, Amy, and I appreciate the thoughts because look, you got to start with your demands where they need to be. And if you need to walk it back to 25, then you walk it back to 25, but you start asking by 30. So working people pointing at each other going, that's too much. No. You start the fight by going, we're going to put everything on the table. We're going to go and we're going to get the best we can. Because look, Amazon's going to come in and go, we don't want to pay you anything. We want you to work for free. Because it's what they want you to do anyways. Isn't this what the gig stuff's all about? Isn't this why they keep pushing all the responsibility onto the backs of the workforce? Isn't this why we keep seeing this attack on we the people? I mean, look, I go back to years past. The reality is wages were much higher decades ago for working people, because over the last 40 years, corporate America has had the ability to bust up unions and break up and tear us apart, so that we don't ask for what we earn. I'm not going to say deserve, what we earn. And that's the important part, what we are worth and what we earn. because without us, they don't make this profit. And they know that. Pretty simple stuff. Also, Pete listening on WELE 1380, The Cat in Daytona Beach, Florida. And welcome to my newest listeners there in Florida. Thanks for being here. Pete writes, thank you, Sanity in Talk Radio, from your newest loyal listener. Thank you, Pete. Appreciate that. Love to get some feedback from our good friends in Daytona Beach. Looking forward to hearing more from the good folks listening on WELE 1380, The Cat in Daytona. And welcome aboard, guys. If you've got thoughts, questions, comments, I'd love to hear it. Maybe we'll use it here on the show. We love the emails, especially the crazy ones, which was where we started the whole day off today. Yes, this lib did answer your question. But thanks so much for tuning in. If you missed any of the program, make sure you grab the podcast. Share it with your conservative friends. They need to hear it. Wherever you get your podcast, from iTunes to iHeart, Podbean to Stitcher, everywhere in between, it's there for you always, all the time. Again, you got comments, questions, I want to hear them, especially the crazy ones. Rick at thericksmithshow.com. Thanks for being here. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.